Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Petunia's Place, celebrating Independent Bookstore Day Saturday, April 26 with a special story time at 11 a.m., drawings, giveaways, and book signings at 1 p.m. featuring authors Christina Lynch, Janine Raymond, Francesca Parisi, and Jessica Kulekshian. Details at petuniasbooks.com. And from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, April 24th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. International photographer Nevada Wier has a unique perspective on how to photograph the world.
Photography is a very democratic medium, especially these days with phones. Everybody is going to take an impressive photograph at some point in their life.
She tells us how she gets subjects to open up. We'll hear that right after these news headlines. Construction of the high-speed rail line from Merced to Bakersfield will be finished. At least that was the consensus at a public discussion hosted by our news partner Fresno Land on the rail project this week. Ian Chowdhury is CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. He told an audience at Fresno City College that he has no intention of leaving the rail line unfinished.
That will be a disaster for the U.S. and for the entire Northern Hemisphere.
He also said they're looking for alternative funding sources, especially since a recent audit launched by the Trump administration could jeopardize billions of dollars in funding.
If that happens, we have to adjust, pivot, and just continue building what we're doing.
The first segment of the rail is slated to be finished in 2033. Farmland values in much of California are down as farmers worry about added pressure from U.S. tariffs. Values dropped rapidly last year, some by as much as 25%. That's according to a report released last month by the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers. The organization says the driving factors are low commodity prices and high inflation. But farmers may soon have to contend with what could come from a trade war launched by President Trump's tariffs on imports from much of the rest of the world. Researchers who study education are calling for more support for students learning English as a second language. As Esther Quintanilla with our news partner, the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, reports, English learners make up nearly a fifth of California's students.
According to the report published by two education nonprofits, the state doesn't have enough programs to support these students, including dual language immersion programs. The study authors at WestEd and Sobrato Philanthropies say these programs can help students learn in their native languages while becoming fluent in English. That's important because state data show the majority of English learners are socioeconomically disadvantaged. This makes them more likely to need extra support in the classroom. The researchers are also pushing the state to hire culturally competent staff and invest in bilingual teachers. Governor Gavin Newsom and the State Department of Education have pushed for half of all students to have access to bilingual education by the end of the decade. For CVJC, I'm Esther Quintanilla.
Sobrato Philanthropies is a funder of CVJC. California leaders are working in various ways to counteract problems they say are caused by President Trump's ongoing trade wars. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis echoed comments made earlier by Governor Gavin Newsom when it comes to President Donald Trump's tariffs.
The Canadians are really offended as a country by this idea that the President of the United States is saying that we're going to annex you, we're going to make you another state. And Canadians are taking it personally and saying, you know what, we're not going to spend our dollars.
Kounalakis says that means less money for California's economy.
We're working hard to send that message to our Canadian tourist friends to please, keep your trips and come and visit here. It's very important for our economy that we continue to have foreign travelers here.
Travel spending in the state topped $150 billion in 2023, according to Visit California, an industry organization that tracks and promotes tourism in the state.
How can I support all the great programs I love on KVPR while gazing at the San Joaquin River with a delicious Pinot or tasty ale in hand? Answer: get your tickets now for the annual KVPR wine and beer tasting on Sunday, May 4th. Dozens of vintners and brewers will be showing off their latest creations. Complimentary round-trip bus transportation, including lunch, will be provided in Bakersfield and Visalia. Tickets on sale at kvpr.org/wine.
And now to our main story. Most of us have a smartphone in our pocket these days, and by extension, a camera. And while many of us think we can take pretty good pictures, not many of us can travel to remote parts of the world to capture people and places that few ever experience. That is, unless you're Nevada Wier. From Sri Lanka to Argentina to Namibia, she has traveled for years, taking photographs that have been featured in National Geographic, the New York Times Magazine, and the Smithsonian. Currently, her work is on display at the Spectrum Art Gallery in Fresno, and tonight, Nevada's presenting a keynote lecture at Fresno City College to discuss her career and her work. But first, she joined us for a conversation about why she thinks photography is different from other types of storytelling.
The single image can capture so much. If you get that exact precious moment, it has the ability to stimulate the imagination and for the viewer to picture what the totality would be. And I'm a storyteller with my images. I started out as a magazine photographer. And so learning how to run a visual narrative was something I learned, particularly from National Geographic, because they're so story oriented. And having a visual narrative of singular images, it's a very special art form.
You've had the opportunity to take photos across the world, including Colombia, Mongolia, Iceland, South Africa. Is there any particular country or place that really resonated with you, that you feel inspired by?
Well, it's a question everyone asks me. Now, because of the fact I lived in Kathmandu in the 70s, so I'm very, very fond of Nepal. I was started out as an outdoor guide. I was a trekking guide, and photography was my passion. And by being in Nepal, I discovered actually what was at the bottom of the mountain, all these cultures, was so much more interesting than what was up top. And I became very, very involved in ethnographic photography. And from there, I moved on. I spent a lot of time in Myanmar. I did a book on Vietnam. So I got known for Asia. But my very first trip was actually to Bolivia in 1978. So now I'm circling back and spending more time in South America. I don't think it's possible to have a favorite country. The world is just so diverse, and the different languages that we're losing at an alarming rate. But I love the nuances and the smells. I'm kind of a sensory junkie. So any country I go to, I just become fascinated.
Now, I know there's some journalism guidance out there that says we should capture what we're seeing, but not necessarily engage or interact with our subjects. And I think some people agree with this, others don't. What's your experience like? Are you engaging with people that you're shooting, or are you just an observer?
I don't see how it's possible to be a completely impartial observer. How can one understand the culture if you're always standing back? I mean, I first of all, I'm not a current events photographer. I'm not photographing war zones and the crack dens of places. I'm looking for what's beautiful in the world. So my favorite thing is photographing people. And there's no way to photograph people honestly unless I get involved with them. And I believe very sincerely, I dive right in and I work very closely. I work with short lenses because I want people to know I'm there. You have to synchronize with the culture. You have to find a way to get a conduit. But I found that 90% of the world loves to be photographed. It's up to how I approach people. So being impassive would be impossible for me.
And that was my next question, is how do people receive this? Does it take you time to kind of ingratiate yourself in a particular community?
Well, you can't generalize, about cultures. There's some countries like India. If you're not comfortable photographing people, go to India, because especially the Hindu, India will sit in your lap. I work though with a lot of very remote tribal cultures, and I have to move in a little slower. It's not that people don't want to be photographed. It's just that you've got to take some time to get to know people. So it really depends on the culture that I'm working with. But I find that any impediment to photographing people usually comes from your own mind. People tend to project, oh, it's a Muslim culture, I can't do this. Oh, I'm a woman, I can't do that. I just let it go free. And I'm approaching person by person, not making judgments about a culture.
And when you're going through your photographs, I'm curious, I mean, you probably have thousands upon thousands. What separates a good photograph from like the photograph?
Photography is a very democratic medium, especially these days with phones. Everybody is going to take an impressive photograph at some point in their life. The odds are with you. It's not like I can hold up a violin for the rest of my life and no song's going to come out. But what the trick is to be consistent. And the trick is I have the good fortune of going to very interesting places, but I have to make an interesting image of that interesting place. And that's harder than it seems. I find actually photography very difficult. And the more you kind of move up the scale of really trying to become, more of a, let's say, a virtuoso, a maven of light, a maven of photography, the harder and harder it gets. And I think that's one of the reasons I stayed with it, because it's constantly challenging me. And of course, the photography landscape has changed significantly since the days when I started out in film, and now digital, and now it's, moved into, realms that no one even anticipated. But I stay very pure. I don't alter any of my images. I don't take out a wire or a piece of paper or anything. I still go old school of capturing, I want everything to matter in my frame, every single little detail. One little thing doesn't matter. It's not a photograph that interests me.
I encourage people to look at your work. It is stunning and very emotional, some images as well. You have a keynote lecture tonight at Fresno City College. What can people look forward to hearing you talk about?
Well, I'm going to talk about how I got started. Okay, it was a little bit of a sinuous route, and how does one get started, especially this was in the 80s when I first started. How does one work with magazines and so forth, and also my background in the outdoors, because I've done a lot of, at that time, remote expeditions. So I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about what I've done over the past year, because I travel about 6 to 8 months out of the year. And then, of course, I'm going to introduce my work with infrared photography, because I always have another camera with me that only captures infrared light. And that's the exhibit I have at the Spectrum Gallery. And I'll introduce that toward the end of my lecture.
Photographer Nevada Wier, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was really nice talking to you.
Nevada is presenting a keynote lecture at 6 p.m. tonight at Fresno City College. She'll also have an arts reception Friday night at the Spectrum Art Gallery in Fresno's Tower District. Both events have free admission. And that's today's show. Have an arts-related story that you'd like the show to cover? Email podcast@kvpr.org. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
This is Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. You'll see your favorite actors, directors, and comedians on late-night TV shows or YouTube. But what you get with Fresh Air is a deep dive. Spend some quality time with people like Billie Eilish, Questlove, Ariana Grande, Stephen Colbert, and so many more. We ask questions you won't hear asked anywhere else. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.